This is Yemen. Yemen is a Middle Eastern country where the terrain is distinguished by a narrow coastal plain backed by flat-topped hills and rugged mountains. An upland desert plain in the center of the country slopes into the desert interior of the Arabian Peninsula. Sana'a, the capital city of Yemen, at 7,500 feet, is one of the highest capital cities in the world. It had free elections until the early 2000s when political instability halted regular elections. Ever since the North and the South Yemen united in 1990, they have had economic difficulties. When Yemen, then on the UN Security Council, voted against the use of force in Iraq after they invaded Kuwait, the US and Saudi Arabia cut off all aid to them. Saudi Arabia also expelled 750,000 Yemenis living in Saudi Arabia. Their 1994 civil war racked up even more debt for their country.
If you're living in Yemen, chances are you can't remember the last time you were safe and fed. The civil war that is ravaging the country has been going on for 8 years. The war began when Houthi insurgents with links to Iran took control of Yemen's capital city, Sana'a. They demanded lower fuel prices and a new government. After failed negotiations, the rebels seized the presidential palace in January 2015, leading President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi and his government to resign. Beginning in March 2015, a coalition of Gulf states led by Saudi Arabia launched a campaign of economic isolation and airstrikes against the Houthi insurgents, with U.S. logistical and intelligence support. Hadi rescinded his resignation and returned to Aden in September 2015, and the fighting has continued since. By the end of 2021, the war caused 377,000 deaths, with 60% of them a result of hunger, lack of healthcare, and unsafe water. More than 10,200 children are known to have been killed or wounded as a direct result of the fighting, and 23.4 million people are in need of humanitarian aid, creating the world's worst food security crisis.
For a variety of reasons, Yemen is hosting more than 137,000 Somalian and Ethiopian refugees and asylum seekers, making it the world's second largest host of Somali refugees. Within the country's borders, in 2020 alone, 172,000 people were uprooted, making Yemen's internally displaced population the fourth largest in the world. Most of the internally displaced have been living this way for upwards of 2 years. This has further strained their already strained resources.
One of the most disproportionately affected demographics is children. They make up 79% of the displaced population, and their situation is becoming increasingly difficult. 1 in every 4 displaced Yemeni families are now run by a woman or girl, with 20% of those under the age of 18 years old. Due to established cultural traditions, females are forced to take on the task of supporting the family while also dealing with inequity, restricted access to assistance, and other impediments. Malnourished children under the age of 5 reached 2.4 million by the end of 2020, accounting for half of all the children under the age of 5 in the country. The mental and emotional toll has been significant as well, with over half of children suffering from depression, which has long-term implications for their ability to be productive adults. All these debilitating conditions are making it almost impossible for children to survive and live healthy lives, even if they get out of Yemen.
People often overlook the treatment and condition that the young men of Yemen are living in. Around 10,300 young men have been recruited to war in Yemen since 2014, and from July to August of 2020 only, 111 children were killed during war. Even schools are used to help get them into recruitment for the war. The education provided to children in Yemen is filtered to promote and lure them into recruitment. The men over the age of 10 are also taught to have extremist views and are taught violence. This is taking away from the real education that they deserve to have, but unfortunately don't. One boy said, "I was assigned with loading the guns and transporting them with foodstuffs to high, rugged areas. It was hard and exhausting. I used to get beaten and reprimanded when I arrived late. I cried a lot during those nights, fearing for my life and for missing my mother, father, and brothers." If they made a mistake, they would be given several punishments, such as food deprivation, imprisonment, physical and sexual assault, and death threats. This has created a culture of fear, which has been used to control the young men of Yemen. Being forced to fight in wars and taught such prejudiced opinions will make it that much harder to reunite Yemen if the war ever ends.
The third demographic we will address is women and how extremely poorly they are treated. A journalist in Yemen found lots of information regarding the difficult conditions experienced by women. Females have lots of expectations put on them by their society, especially with caring for their families and home. There are about 2 million displaced women who are suffering from cruelty and bitterness. 1/4 of families who are displaced are headed by a woman or a girl. With the widespread famine, it is also more difficult for women who are pregnant. They are very much malnourished, and this is dangerous for the baby. The same journalist mentioned earlier also shared a widow with 6 children of her own. Miriam also adopted 7 of her nieces and nephews after their parents were killed in a bombing in 2015. That forced the whole family to flee their home. Now living in a temporary shelter in the north of the capital, Sana'a, they face a daily battle for survival. Most of the time, we only eat once a day. I don't have fuel or firewood, so we burn plastic bottles and rubbish when we have something to cook, she says. Because of the place that women have in their society, they are under significant pressure to provide for themselves, but also all the people around them.
A demographic that is often overlooked is the elderly. More susceptible to health issues, 69% of Yemeni elderlies rely on others to help them survive. Due to their age and specific vulnerabilities, such as physical debilitation, they often face difficulty fleeing conflict. They can't walk as fast as others can, and they can't go as long without water as well. This can cause them to become handicapped while attempting to escape. There is also always the risk of getting separated from their families, and in some extreme cases, the elderly Yemenis are intentionally left behind to manage family property. They are often overlooked by governments and humanitarian services as well. Additionally, 95% of older women and men have no access to any income. Malnutrition levels among older people are alarmingly high. However, aid agencies try, with not much success, to deliver them food. When these agencies can reach them, the standard rations that are available are not great for many older people who may struggle to digest this food. The elderly are a necessity to a culture. They are able to pass down generations of stories and history, and without them, the basis on which a society is built on would crumble.
The terrorist organization responsible for inflicting majority of the damage discussed before is the Houthis. They are a Zaidi Shiite movement that has been Yemen's majority government since 2004. The Houthis took control of the Yemeni capital city, Sana'a, in September 2014 and continued on towards Aden, Yemen's largest city. In response to Houthi advances, Saudi Arabia and other Arab states launched a military campaign in March 2015. The Houthis have been backed by Iran. They are the driving force behind the Yemen policy. They are acting as the Houthis' friend, philosopher, guide, and mentor. Ex-President Ali Abdullah Saleh had officially aligned with the Houthis in May 2015, helping the Houthis gain control over much of northern Yemen. On December 2, 2017, Salah publicly split from the Houthis. He said, "I call upon the brothers in our neighboring states and the alliance to stop their aggression, lift the siege, open the airports, and allow food, aid, and the saving of the wounded, and we will turn a new page by virtue of our neighborliness." 2 days later, he was killed by Houthi rebels in a roadside ambush. The Houthis do not want anyone in Yemen to have a dissenting opinion of them, and if someone does, they are quickly shut down, seen in the case of ex-President Ali Abdullah Saleh.
Living in Yemen is incredibly difficult and has been for many decades. While many agencies have tried to provide aid, the overwhelming amount of people struggling means that it is impossible to get aid to everyone who needs it. The UNHCR, the UN agency in charge of aid and protection for refugees, has been assisting schools in providing educational materials in areas hosting a high concentration of forcibly displaced children. Yemen is a country with a rich history, but conflict after conflict has left it destitute. The very framework of the country has been destroyed. There have been multiple peace talks over the years, however, they have all fizzled out. For the people of Yemen, the fighting, violence, and trauma continues.